reached, with the U.S. side to hold a meeting between the Russian and the U.S. experts to discuss preparations for holding the international conference on Syria. Army units continue to pursue terrorist groups and restore security and stability to several areas. The great Syrian poet Suleiman Laissa passes away aged 92, leaving behind a rich legacy for generations. Afternoon and happy Eid. This is our news bulletin for this afternoon. I'm Dani Nizam, sitting in for Ala Ibrahim. A unit of the Syrian Arab Army confronted an armed terrorist group which attempted to attack military posts in Kafar Shlaya and Idlib, killing a number of terrorists and injuring many others, while the rest of the terrorists escaped. A military source said that units of the army targeted the terrorists' hideouts and gatherings in Bidama, Adnaba, Saraqib, Taftanaz, Sheikh Yusuf, Binnish, Ma'arrat al-Nu'man and Kafar Roma, killing a number of terrorists and destroying their weapons and criminal equipment. Earlier, units of the Syrian Arab Army, in cooperation with forces of national defense, stormed a terrorist den in Ariha in Idlib countryside and found inside many explosive devices ready to be detonated, in addition to huge quantities of arms and ammo like RPG shells, huge quantities of stolen and smuggled medicine, military uniforms and leaflets of the terrorists Jabhat al-Nusra. In Latakia, northern countryside, the Syrian Arab Army destroyed a storehouse full of arms, American-made Stinger missiles, Grad missiles, many heavy machine guns, and a 23mm cannon. A military source said that a big number of the terrorists have been eliminated and others wounded in Salma, Sheikh Nabhan, Al-Hambushia, Al-Durra, Wadi al-Sheikhan, and Ain al-Juza villages. Among the identified terrorists were the Kuwaiti Abu Anas. A Syrian Arab Army unit prevented terrorists from detonating a car bomb in New Aleppo neighborhood in Aleppo city. The army uncovered a Saba car containing 250 kilograms of explosives, which was parked behind Al Iman mosque in the neighborhood, and engineering units disabled the explosives. The army also dismantled the second car bomb near the Engineers Association in the same neighborhood. An official source said information from locals led to the discovering of the car, a white Saba, which was equipped with 300 kilograms of explosives, and that engineering units dismantled it. In Homs countryside, a military source said an army unit ambushed an armed terrorist group driving a car loaded with weapons and with a heavy machine gun mounted on it between the villages of Al-Hadath and Hawarin. A military source said that the army seized and confiscated large amounts of weapons and ammunition and a pickup equipped with heavy machine guns. Scores of terrorists, many of them of the Saudi nationality, were killed in the operation. In Daraa province, units of the Syrian Arab Army eliminated and wounded scores of terrorists, destroyed a number of their dens with all arms and ammo inside, and confiscated 30 anti-armor mines in Al-Jabiliyah, in Daraa al-Balad, Tel Shab, Jamla, Tubna, Nawa, Al-Basala, Tsil, Ain Zakar, Saidi al-Jawlan, Inkhil, Hayat, in the city's countryside. Moreover, units of the army eliminated a number of terrorists who attempted to attack military checkpoints in Daraa southern countryside. Among the killed was Abdullah Abu Zrik, nicknamed Kashusk of Daraa, linked to the so-called Al-Muthanna Brigade. The Chief of the General Staff of the Army and Armed Forces, General Ali Abdullah Ayyub, visited a number of army sites and checkpoints, meeting soldiers and congratulating them on the occasion of Eid al-Fitr. Ayyub wished the soldiers good luck in fulfilling their duties, praising their work around the clock to keep citizens safe and secure, adding that Syrians value the role played by the Syrian army in defending the homeland. He urged soldiers to remain vigilant and watchful to thwart those who seek to tamper with Syria's stability and security, pointing out to the victories achieved by the Syrian army across Syria. On the occasion of Eid al-Fitr, members of Al-Wafa organization have paid the wounded of the army a visit at Yusuf al-Azma military hospital and presented them with gifts in a gesture of gratitude and thankfulness for their sacrifices. Members of the army voiced optimism of imminent victory, pledging the Syrian people to remain the shield that will defend the homeland. They expressed their wishes to come back to the battlefield as soon as possible. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that an agreement was reached with the U.S. side to hold a meeting between Russian and U.S. experts by the end of August to discuss preparations for holding the International Conference on Syria. Lavrov said that during a press conference following a quartet ministerial meeting which brought together the foreign and defense ministers of Russia and the U.S., that the two sides had consensus on the necessity for holding Geneva conference based on the meeting which was convened in Moscow between him and U.S. counterpart John Kerry. He added that both sides agreed on the importance for moving and working to carry out the decisions reached during the G8 meeting in North Ireland regarding the unification of the efforts of government and opposition to uproot terrorism from Syria. On his part, Kerry said that no matter how different the U.S. and Russian viewpoints are on this crisis in Syria, the final response is going to be the political solution and negotiations, considering the International Conference on Syria as a step in this direction. The Kremlin denied that President Vladimir Putin discussed with Chief of the Saudi Intelligence Bandar bin Sultan issues related to technical military cooperation. Russian Vice President Yuri Ushakov said that the two sides did not discuss issues related to military cooperation, adding that the talks centered on clarifying the stance towards the crisis in Syria. The Russian statement came in response to fabricated news about Russia's intention to strike a big weapons deal with Saudi Arabia to make Moscow change its stand towards the crisis in Syria. Secretary General of the Communist Party of India, Prakash Karat, stressed the solidarity of the Indian people, the Syrian people, against the Zionist and imperialist conspiracy. Meeting the Syrian ambassador in India, Riyad Abbas Karat, expressed concern over the practices of some neighboring and Arab states which are supporting terrorism and allowing the entry of terrorists into Syria, hoping the crisis in Syria will end and the Syrian government will succeed in expelling the terrorists.
We in India are deeply concerned about the continuing efforts to create terrorist attacks and violence and destabilize Syria. And we want all efforts to arrive at a political settlement which will ensure that Syria remains united and a secular Arab state. And we are strongly condemning the efforts by outside powers who are financing and supporting those rebel forces who are out to destabilize and disintegrate Syria. Therefore, our solidarity and support is there for the people of Syria, for their unity and for their future peaceful development.
The Austrian newspaper Die Presse has revealed that fierce fighting broke out among thousands of armed terrorists along the Syrian-Turkish border over the loots, which proves the lies and false motives raised by these groups. The newspaper quoted a well-informed source as saying that these groups sell the loots in the Turkish markets in return for money. The newspaper added that about 3,000 armed men along the Syrian-Turkish border linked with various armed groups and factions are fighting each other over the loots and to secure safe routes to smuggle Syria's crude oil oil to Turkey. The newspaper further quoted military sources in Istanbul as saying that the Turkish border guards have confiscated more than 4 million litres of oil, derivatives, while smuggling them out of Syria by the armed groups to be sold in Turkey. Renowned Syrian poet Süleyman Laissa, one of the most prominent Arab contemporary poets who has dedicated much of his poetry to national and pan-Arab issues, passed away in Damascus at the age of 92.
Süleyman Laissa had also dedicated a large part of his poetry to childhood, which he regarded as the last refuge for the aspirations of the Arab nation. Funeral ceremony will be held for Laissa, who left behind 2 sons and a daughter, tomorrow, as he will be escorted from Al-Assad University Hospital to his final resting place in Sheikh Raslan Cemetery in Damascus. Süleyman Laissa was born in 1921 in the village of Nuayriya near the city of Antakya. He received his first education in his village and later in Antakya, and continued his education in Hama in Damascus. Through an Iraqi scholarship, he attended the teacher training college in Baghdad, and after graduation he returned to Syria to take a post as first instructor of Arabic language at the Ministry of Education. He started writing poetry at the age of 9, and after the separation of his native district Liwa from Syria, he emigrated to other parts of Syria to continue with his friends the fight against the French mandate. Laissa was one of the founders of the Arab Writers' Union in Syria in 1969. He spoke French and English in addition to Arabic and Turkish. In cooperation with his wife, Dr. Malaki Abiad, he contributed to the translation of many literary books from English and French into Arabic, mostly Algerian books written in French. In October 1982, he received the Afro-Asian Writers' Union Lotus Prize for Poetry. In 1984, his work for children received the prize of the Arab League Education, Cultural and Scientific Organization. In 1990, he was elected as a member of the Arab Language Academy, and in 2000, he received the Babatin Prize for Poetical Creativity. In 2005, he was granted the Syrian Order of Merit. Among the most famous books by the poet are the poetical works, 4 volumes, The Path of a Lifetime, The Woman in My Poetry, in addition to a collection of stories and tales for children.
Our condolences to the Laissa family at the end of our news bulletin. I'd like to remind you, for more news on Syria and the region, you can visit our website, syriaonline.sy. Once again, my wishes for a pleasant and safe Eid. God bless you, and long live Syria. It's over to our news for our economic news with Vani after the break.